Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We're diving into something that we get asked about all the time, and that's how to improve your English speaking, especially when you're practicing on your own.
It's such a common question, and it really makes sense. I mean, can you really become fluent if you don't have anyone else to talk to?
Right. You'd think you need a partner to actually practice speaking, but what we want to explore today is how practicing alone is not only possible, it can actually be a really effective way to build a solid foundation.
You know, a lot of people might be surprised to hear this, but many really confident English speakers actually started out by practicing solo. It's like laying the groundwork before you start building a house, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of like learning any new skill. Like if you think about a musician practicing an instrument, they spend hours and hours alone before they ever perform with other people. So in a way, practicing English by yourself is like that important rehearsal time.
Exactly. So what we're going to do in this deep dive is unpack some really practical strategies that you can use to speak more fluently, think faster in English, and really just express yourself with confidence, even when you're practicing on your own.
Yeah, we'll be looking at some mental exercises, some creative habits you can fit into your day, and we'll even talk about how technology can be a surprisingly helpful tool when you're practicing solo.
And the best part is, you can use these techniques no matter where you are in your learning journey. It doesn't matter if you're a beginner or more advanced. And you can practice pretty much anywhere at home during a break or even while you're out and about.
So our aim today is to bust some of those common myths that might be holding you back and really unlock some powerful techniques that you can start using today. Like one of the biggest myths I hear all the time is that talking to yourself is pointless. What do you think about that?
Well, it seems kind of funny when you think about it, right? Because we all have that inner voice, that constant chatter in our heads. So why not switch that voice to English? When you actually say your thoughts out loud, it helps you organize them in English. And that can make speaking to other people feel way more natural.
Yeah, it's like a dress rehearsal for your brain almost.
Exactly. It's like giving a presentation to yourself before the big day. And it also helps you pinpoint those areas where you might get stuck, like, oh, I don't know the word for this in English.
It's like warming up before you exercise.
Yeah.
Right. You got to get those speaking muscles ready.
Absolutely. Another myth I hear pretty often is that you absolutely must speak with native speakers to improve. What are your thoughts on that?
I think while talking with native speakers can definitely be helpful, it's definitely not the only way to improve. And the great thing is we live in a time where there are so many other resources available.
That's so true. There are podcasts and videos made by native speakers, and there are all sorts of interactive apps that can help you immerse yourself in the language, even if you don't have a native speaker to practice with right now.
And another one that I think can really hold people back is this idea that speaking out loud when you're alone is, well, weird.
You know, I actually see it as the opposite.
Yeah.
Talking to yourself gives you this safe space to experiment with the language. You can make mistakes and try things out without worrying about anyone judging you, which is really important when you're learning something new.
It's your own personal language laboratory. You can repeat things as many times as you need to, stumble over words, and work through pronunciation challenges, and no one's watching.
Right, and no one's going to laugh at you if you mess up.
Exactly. And then there's this belief that you need to study for hours every single day to make any real progress.
I think this is a huge misconception. You know, it's not really about the quantity of time, it's the quality. Even short bursts of focused practice can be way more effective than long, sporadic study sessions.
Even 10 minutes a day can make a big difference if you do it consistently. It's about forming a habit.
Right, it's like going to the gym. It's better to go for a short time every day than to try to cram it all in once a week. So now that we've talked about some of those common myths, let's get into some actual techniques you can try.
Okay, and I think one of the most powerful techniques is to actively think in English. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. It's a real game changer. When you start thinking in English, it stops being something you have to consciously do and becomes more automatic. It becomes a natural part of your day.
It's like if you're constantly translating from your native language to English in your head, it can feel clunky, like you're trying to type with gloves on.
Yeah, it's like trying to run through mud. But when you start thinking directly in English, it's like you've cleared a path and the words can flow freely.
So for our listeners out there, how can they actually start thinking in English more often? What are some things they can do?
Well, one easy way is to just start narrating your everyday actions. So when you're making breakfast or getting dressed, Try describing what you're doing in English, like I'm pouring cereal into the bowl or I'm putting on my shoes. Simple things like that.
It's a good way to force your brain to use everyday vocabulary, right?
Exactly. And it helps you get comfortable with forming sentences naturally without having to translate everything in your head.
So it's like building those basic building blocks of the language step by step.
Right. Another technique is to try giving your thoughts a radio commentary treatment. As you go about your day, pretend you're a commentator describing what you're thinking or planning to do. You could say something like, okay, next up, I'm going to grab coffee and then I'll check my emails.
I love that.
Yeah.
It sounds fun, and it keeps your brain engaged with the language.
Right. And it doesn't have to be serious. You can make it funny or even a little bit silly. The point is to just keep practicing thinking and speaking in English.
So what if someone is having trouble forming full sentences in English? Where should they start?
If full sentences feel a little overwhelming at first, you can start with just keywords. So if you see a book, for example, just think or say book. Or if you're thinking about going for a walk, just say walk.
Yeah, so it's like starting with the individual pieces of a puzzle and then gradually putting them together.
Exactly. And as you get more comfortable, you can start connecting those keywords into phrases and then into full sentences. Like instead of just book, you could say, I'm reading a book.
Okay, and here's another tip. Try using visual cues to help you think in English. So, whenever you see something like a chair or a window, try to let the English word for it pop into your mind without translating it first.
Right, so you're basically creating a direct link between what you see and the English word for it.
Okay, so we've talked about thinking in English. Now let's move on to another technique called shadowing, which you've called being a vocal stunt double. What does that mean?
Imagine you're a stunt double in a movie, right? But instead of doing all the dangerous action scenes, you're imitating the actor's voice. So in shadowing, you basically do the same thing with spoken English. You try to match another speaker's words, their tone, and even their speed. It's like lip syncing, but you're actually speaking.
So it's not really about perfect grammar or understanding every single word at this point?
Not exactly. The main goal with shadowing is to get a feel for the rhythm and flow of English, how it sounds, and how it's spoken naturally. It's about capturing the music of the language.
Okay, that makes sense. So how would someone get started with shadowing? What would they need?
You can start with short audio or video clips, maybe from a podcast, a movie, or even an educational video. You listen to a short phrase or sentence, and then immediately after you hear it, you try to repeat it. Try to match the speaker's pronunciation and their speed as closely as you can.
So you're basically following along like a shadow.
Exactly. Don't worry if you stumble over some words at first. The goal is not to be perfect right away. It's about training your mouth to make those English sounds more naturally.
And is it okay to use subtitles at first?
Yeah, definitely. You could start with subtitles on kind of like karaoke for language learning, and then gradually turn them off as you get more comfortable.
Okay, and you mentioned recording yourself while shadowing. How does that help?
When you listen back to a recording of yourself, you can pick up on things that you might not notice while you're speaking. Like maybe your voice trails off at the end of sentences, or maybe you're not pronouncing certain sounds correctly.
So it's like having another set of ears listening to you.
Right. It helps you become more aware of how you sound and where you need to focus your practice.
Now, for a more unconventional approach, and this one might sound a little strange, you can try practicing speaking with pets. What are your thoughts on that?
I know it sounds a bit funny, but pets can actually be great language partners. They're usually pretty good listeners, they don't interrupt, and they don't judge you.
I can see that. So how would someone go about practicing with their pet? What could they talk about?
You can start by describing what your pet's doing. Like the cat is sleeping on the couch, or the dog is wagging its tail. You can also try having little conversations with them, even though you know they won't answer back.
It's a good way to get comfortable with speaking out loud without feeling self-conscious.
Exactly. And if you don't have a pet, you can always talk to a houseplant, or even just your own reflection in the mirror.
It's all about creating that feeling of having a conversation, even if it's just with yourself.
Right. And speaking of talking to yourself, let's talk about another really important technique. Speaking out loud every day, even if you're just talking to yourself.
Sometimes it's easy to forget about that one, but it's so important. Language is all about sound, so you need to actually practice making those sounds.
Absolutely. So what are some things people can talk about when they're practicing alone?
Well, you can start by describing your surroundings. Just look around and say what you see in English. Or you could try summarizing your day or even telling yourself a short story.
Right, and you can even practice different scenarios, like ordering food at a restaurant or asking for directions.
That's a good way to get used to using different types of vocabulary and grammar.
Exactly. And remember, English isn't just about words and grammar. It's also about expressing yourself. So don't be afraid to be a bit dramatic when you're practicing. Change your voice, try different accents, and have fun with it.
That's a great tip. Now let's talk about technology and how it can help with practicing speaking alone.
You know, these days, there are so many apps and AI tools that can act as virtual speaking partners. They're available 24/7, and they never get tired of listening to you practice.
What are some examples of apps and AI tools that our listeners might want to check out?
There are apps specifically for pronunciation, like ELSA Speak, which can listen to you and tell you if you're pronouncing words correctly. There are also more general AI tools like ChatGPT, which can have conversations with you on all sorts of topics.
So it's like having a digital conversation partner.
Right. And I think it's important to set realistic goals when you're using these tools. Even just 5 or 10 minutes a day can make a difference.
And don't forget, actually speak out loud.
Yes, absolutely. Use the microphone and really practice forming those words and sentences. Don't just type them out.
Okay, and finally, let's talk about recording yourself speaking.
Recording yourself is like having a fitness tracker for your language skills. It lets you see how you're progressing and identify areas where you can improve.
It can be a little scary to listen to yourself at first.
I know, but it's really helpful. A good exercise is to pick a topic, like something you did today, and talk about it for a couple of minutes. Then listen back to the recording and ask yourself, how did I sound? Was I clear? Were there any awkward pauses?
Yeah, and over time, you'll be able to hear yourself improving. You'll be able to hear how much more fluent you're becoming.
Exactly. And here's a fun challenge. Try recording yourself reading a short English text, like something from a YouTube video. Try to match the speaker's rhythm and intonation. Then listen back and compare your recording to the original. You might be surprised at how much progress you've made.
So we've covered a lot of ground today, and I think the key takeaway is that it's definitely possible to improve your speaking, even when you don't have a partner to practice with.
Right. There are so many different techniques you can try, from thinking in English to shadowing to using technology and even talking to your pets.
And remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about being consistent and just having fun with the process.
Exactly. And I think one of the most important things is to just be patient with yourself. Don't get discouraged if you don't see results overnight. Just keep practicing and you will get better.
So, any last words of encouragement for our listeners?
Don't wait for the perfect moment or the perfect speaking partner. Just start speaking English whenever you can. Talk to yourself, sing along to English songs, have imaginary conversations. The more you practice, the more confident you'll become.
I love that. Remember, you have everything you need to become a fantastic English speaker. Thanks for tuning in.